Hi, so this is my free health question session at a slightly later time of 8:20. If you're wanting to join, I hope you got the message which I sent out a few times that I'm starting this at a later time now. So I'm offering this free while we're in this lockdown situation to hopefully offer some support to anyone around their health at this time, whether you've got health problems happening or whether you're just generally wanting to focus on improving your health at this time. Some people seem to be busier than usual and other people less busy than usual, so if you've got more time on your hands, this could be a very good time to focus on strengthening your health. So from now on I'm going to start this at 8:20, this later time, because I'm doing quite a lot of online courses. I've just finished a Strengthening Your Immune System, first part of that course. Yep, so 8:20 from now on. So hi Penny, nice to have you here again, and Corinne. So if any of you have any questions you'd like to start with, then please ask. Otherwise I will just start talking about something while I wait for your questions. So no questions coming through yet. So one of the things I've been talking about with the immune system is our mucous membranes in our nose and throat and lung. Our kind of scientific Western understanding of the immune system is that there's a lot of different parts to the immune system. Our lungs form the first barrier to bacteria and viruses getting into the body. Our lymphatic system is cleaning the body, including the spleen and the thymus and all the lymph glands. And then our white blood cells are lots of different kinds of white blood cells which are attacking in all different ways, producing antibodies, etc. But our first line of defense to airborne bacteria and viruses are our lungs. It's quite amazing how they work. I'm just looking for an illustration I'm going to show you. They have to hold out bacteria and viruses and fungi and other kind of microorganisms, which all would love to get in our body because we're nice and warm and moist and full of nutrients. And so to do this, we have a mucous membrane that lines our nose and our sinuses and our mouth and our throat and our lungs. And this is a very thin layer that has to be kept moist, and particularly deeper in the lungs, has to be very thin to allow gases in and out, and yet at the same time has to keep out viruses and bacteria and fungi. This mucous membrane actually has a kind of base level, a layer, and then it has just one layer of cells. So it just has this one layer of cells forming a barrier to the bacteria and viruses getting in. And then there are also some specialized cells called goblet cells which produce a thin mucus which sweeps up bacteria, viruses, dust, any foreign particles that we breathed in, and these cells have little fine hairs on, and they are wafting this thin mucus to the back of the throat where it's swallowed, and it goes down to the stomach, which is acid and it will kill most bacteria and viruses. So this single line of cells is something like a 50th or 100th of a millimeter thick. So it has to create a strong barrier to keep out. You can see this is an illustration of a virus, and this is a bacteria. It has to keep these out, and it's quite amazing that it's able to do this. Just one layer of cells is making this barrier. That mucus has a few antibacterial substances in which help a bit, but mostly these cells are having to make a tight barrier so that things can't get in. If things do start getting in, like pollen and dust, then people may develop allergies like hay fever. So that's a sign that this barrier has become weak. And what weakens this barrier is particularly what in macrobiotics we'd call yin foods, foods which have a more wet, lacking in structure and more expansive effect. So, for example, if we eat a lot of fruit, fruit is kind of soft and wet. If we eat a lot of fruit, then our bodies and our mucous membranes will also become soft and wet as well. And our lips will get bigger, and our flesh will change as well if we really eat a lot of fruit and a lot of fruit juices and so on. And also the mucous membrane will also become more swollen and waterlogged. And when that happens, if it becomes really swollen and waterlogged, the body's natural reaction is to expel that water. The body contracts, and then that water comes out, so that it can start making a good barrier again. Certain foods and drinks, especially a lot of the very popular ones in modern culture, soft drinks with a lot of sugar in. Sugar really expands the mucous membrane. A lot of tropical fruits, fruit juices, even smoothies with a lot of fruit juices, great, but a lot of fruit juice, not so great. A lot of alcohol, caffeinated drinks, sugary foods, etc. all will membrane swell, and then not only can pollen and other foreign matter get into the body, which makes it think it's being attacked and it sets up an immune response, but also viruses and bacteria will get in, and then we pick up infections more easily. And this is why some people pick up infections easily. Some people say if there's a cold or a virus or a flu going around, they always get it. And other people very rarely pick up on infections. And the strength of the lungs and this mucous membrane is a big reason why, I think. Western medicine has focused a lot with immunity on looking at the white blood cells. They only become active when a virus or a bacteria gets inside the body. And then those white blood cells will start attacking the microorganism. But before that happens, the best thing is if we can have a strong barrier and just keep them out in the first place. So, as I've just been saying in my last class, that my experience of picking up infections was before I got into eating a more balanced plant-based diet with macrobiotics. I picked up on, I would get colds. Every couple of years I would get flu. I remember the last time, a week in bed feeling pretty ill. And then I think it took me about 3 weeks to really recover from it. And then since I changed my food and lifestyle, I haven't had flu at all. And rarely pick up on colds. Maybe every couple of years, if there's a nasty one going around, I get one. I'm not completely immune. So I think this effect of creating a barrier is very kind of understated in terms of immunity. Is our first and very important line of defense. Other things which really help the lungs and the mucous membranes is breathing deeply, some strong aerobic exercise, any kind of breathing exercises, abdominal breathing, etc., will help bring more ki or life energy into the lungs and also help to exercise them, which will also strengthen the lungs and their defense. So think about your mucous membrane and the amazing job that this one line of cells does in defending your body. I think one of the in modern society, one of the food which probably most weakens the immune system is sugar, which I know I've talked about in these sessions before. Partly because it swells up that mucous membrane and makes it a weaker barrier. Also, there's some scientific research has shown that when we eat a lot of sugar and there's a lot of sugar circulating in the blood, that one kind of white blood cell, the neutrophils, which are the first white blood cells to arrive at the site of infection, slow down in their action. What they did was to give people a dose of either refined sugar or honey, and also orange juice, which has a lot of fruit sugar in. And then they took people's blood out at hourly intervals and mixed it with a Staphylococcus bacteria, and then looked at it to I'm not exactly sure how to measure the activity of those neutrophils, and all those different kinds of sugar, those neutrophils were less active. They also tried somebody eating starch, as we would do if we were eating whole grains or whole vegetables, and that had no effect, no inhibitory effect on the neutrophils at all. So it's eating refined sugar also, apart from having a bad effect on the mucous membranes, also has a bad effect on the white blood cells, and that effect went on for 4 to 5 hours. Which means that if one's eating a sugary breakfast cereal or some sugary jam for breakfast, and then then you have a sugary snack mid-morning, or you have a sugary pudding after lunch, a bit of cake in the afternoon, and then something sugary in the evening, basically you've weakened your immune system through the whole day. So really good idea to give up eating. And as I think I said before, on our website, if you go to the information button, you can download a document on how to give up sugar, which for some people can be quite easy, and for other people I know can be extremely difficult, because sugar gives us all kinds of comfort and lift and energy, quick energy, and so on. We need to know how to. It helps if you know some good things to replace the sugar with. So the more I study, so just coming back, the more I study mucous membranes, the more I'm amazed by how well they can function if we really help them form a tight barrier. Quite a few of you there now. Nice to have you here again, Dawn, and Dave, as always. So do any of you have any questions about health that I could help with? Whether you have any niggling health problems, or whether people around you do, or whether you've got questions around viral infections, as that is really the topic that we're being faced with right now. So do any of you have any questions? Or any contributions you'd like to make? It would be great to hear any questions you have. Is that one coming through yet? Not yet. Or any suggestions you have. It would be good to hear if you've made any changes recently in your lifestyle or your diet to help your health, and what effect that has had. Would anybody like to share what they have found useful? Or a little bit shy. There's an awful lot of things we could talk about, and why do teenagers get zits? Okay, that's so quite often, because in our when we move from being a child to a teenager, there are more hormones kicking around the body, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, etc. And there are a few cases of skin problems where if people have hormonal suppressants, then the skin problems do improve. So the hormones may be involved to some extent in some people, but I really don't think that they're the main cause. I think there's a couple of influences. Zits and other skin problems in Oriental medicine will be seen as coming from a lung imbalance, because in Oriental medicine they see the organs as having much wider physical, emotional, and energetic functions than what we think of in Western science. So the lungs, as well as protecting us from viruses and bacteria in the air, in Oriental medicine they see them also as protecting the body as a whole, and the skin plays a big part in our body defense by making a thick barrier to everything that's outside. And so they say that the lungs send Wei Qi, or defensive Qi, under the skin to protect the body, and when this Wei Qi is strong, then we're less likely to get infections, and also this helps protect us against heat and cold, and also helps protect us emotionally as well. It helps us to keep other people's emotions out. In a healthy way, if someone is very angry or very upset, we can be compassionate or sensitive, but we want to mostly keep their emotional energy outside. So the lungs have a big effect on the health of the skin. So if a teenager is developing zits, then there must be some imbalance going on with the lungs. And I think there's maybe a couple of reasons for this. One is that often teenagers are experimenting much more with what they're eating and drinking, often getting into a lot of sugary foods, and soft drinks and Coca-Cola and these kind of things, which really weaken the lungs and not only our immunity, but also have an impact on the skin. So certainly a plus also eating a lot of more oily, greasy foods, maybe dairy foods, creamy foods, maybe deep fried foods. And one of the ways the body gets rid of those foods is out through the skin. So I think it's often dietary. But interestingly, in Oriental medicine, the emotional side of the lungs is all about relating to other people. Just like the lungs are taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide and relating to our air environment, they say that emotionally the lungs are very involved with our relationship with other people. We take in energy from other people, we give out energy to the other people. This is how we feel a connection with other people. And teenage times, I think for a lot of people, are quite tough on the relationship side. There's a lot to learn, and how do we relate to the opposite sex, and all of those kind of things. So possibly that a lot of those typical emotions which teenagers are going through also have quite an impact on the lungs energy, and maybe have a knock-on effect on the health of the skin. So I don't know whether anybody else has any other suggestions, but those are those are kind of influences I see. Thanks for that question, David and Dawn. Nice to hear. So you were on a low GI diet to control your blood sugars, and these helped your overall health. So that's great. About digestion, is it true that goat's cheese is better than cow's milk? In some ways, it is. Cow's milk contains a lot of fats, and biologically, what a biologist says is that this is because a calf is quite small when it comes out, and within 6 months, it's really big. It needs a lot of energy, a lot of fat, and so cow's milk contains a lot of fats. Human milk is much lower in fats, and goat's milk is more similar to human milk in that way. So it's less fatty, which means that it's less mucus forming. However, I would stress the word less because I think it is still a little mucus forming for most people. So although it may be better than cow's milk, then I think it's still not a great food to eat on a regular basis. Good to take the next step to eating more plant proteins, whether that's beans, lentils, hummus, bean pates, tofu, tempeh, etc. Will be the next best step. In the early days of macrobiotics, we used to make something called tofu cheese, which is actually quite nice. So I'll tell you how to make that. You get a block of tofu, maybe about 1 inch, 3 centimeters thick, and you smear it all over with miso, with either barley or rice or hacho miso, which is salty and has a lot of flavour in. So you just smear a thin coat over it, put it in the fridge for 2 or 3 days, and a lot of that miso goes into the tofu. You then wash the miso off, and the tofu has taken on a lot of the salt and the flavour from the miso, and then you can then cut it in slices, and it is somewhat like cheese. And my memory of it is that it was nice. And tofu isn't going to be mucus forming at all, so that could be a good alternative. And then Dawn, you're asking, in relation to eating food seasonally and that are specific to an environment, how does this affect someone who grew up in a tropical environment and finds that they're not genetically used to in a cold climate? Well, I think it's a good question, and I think there's a few different issues there. I think genetically, human beings can eat a really wide variety of different foods. And possibly through living in one part of the world and eating a particular food for thousands of years, possibly we are genetically adapted for eating slightly different foods. But mostly we're an omnivore, who can eat a wide variety of foods. So I don't think there's much of a problem on a physical level with growing up in one part of the world and then, for example, the tropics, and then moving to a more temperate climate and changing the foods that one eats. I think there's maybe a bit more of a problem naturally, and to do with a person's identity, because the foods we eat in a certain culture have an effect not only on the physical body but also on how we feel emotionally and mentally and spiritually as well. So if we're used to eating a lot of spices or certain foods, they make us feel a certain way. And this is one reason I think, for example, if people move from India to the UK, it's nice to go on eating some Indian food because it feels like part of one's identity, and it makes one feel the way one's familiar with. And however, for the physical health, that's not necessarily such a good idea, because tropical foods generally have a more cooling, relaxing, opening effect on the body, And if we eat an Indian diet in the UK, we're probably going to start feeling very cold in the winters. Whereas if we started eating more Northern European foods, more barley, wheat, oats, maybe some short grain brown rice, root vegetables, using herbs rather than spices, those foods are going to warm us up and adapt us to our environment. So I think it can be quite a dilemma for people moving from a hot climate or moving from the Caribbean to the UK, wanting to keep eating those traditional foods, but that creating problems in living in a colder climate. So generally what I recommend to people who are making that move is they need to change their foods, but see if they can stick with some of the same recipes. So if they're moving from a hot climate, maybe instead of using basmati rice, they move to a colder climate, start using short grain brown rice. Maybe rather than using a lot of very hot spices, just use spices less often and not so hot, and particularly not the chili, etc., and the really hot ones. Rather than eating, say, a lot of bananas and a lot of bananas in the cooking, start using more English fruits. But if you strengthen your body and your lungs, then okay, you can have a banana occasionally. So you're not kind of losing all of your own kind of cultural food. Okay, glad you like the idea of tofu cheese. Yeah, so interesting. Several people who are intolerant to cow's milk, but they're okay with goats and sheep. Yeah, and that's, I think quite a number of people have experienced that. But, as I say, still sheep's and goat cheese can be, somewhat mucus forming, so not great to have much of. So Anna, thanks for joining, and Angelas, nice to hear you again. Any other questions that you'd like to ask about health or food or exercises, about our body's defense? Thank you for your questions, Dawn. Anybody else have some questions you'd like to ask? Or, as I said before, anything that you'd like to share, anything that you've been doing recently, any changes you've been making in your diet or lifestyle or emotionally that you have found to be beneficial to your health. It's always good to share good information. Okay, nothing coming at the moment. Maybe what I'll talk a little bit about is another aspect to our body defense. Our intestines are helping protect us against microorganisms in our food, and the lining of the intestine looks slightly different, but actually it is still just one line of cells. And the lining of the intestines has an even tougher problem in that it's got to absorb various foods, various sugars and fats and amino acids and vitamins and minerals through that layer, and yet has to make a strong barrier. And so a lot of what I said before about not eating a lot of tropical foods and sugary foods, etc. And chili can be can create some inflammation. Those kind of really hot spices can create some inflammation in the intestine. So good to avoid those, and whole foods appropriate to our climate to create a strong barrier. But what I want to talk a little bit about is, apart from helping our intestines, our flora the microorganisms we have in our intestines, Western research is showing it also has a big effect in helping defend the body. So we have something like 0.5 kilo of beneficial bacteria in our guts. Sometimes it's called the biome. And these are helping us to break down some of our foods. They may even help produce some vitamins like B12 and vitamin K. There's some research which indicates that. And also, our bodies are their home, and a bit like we are, if threatened, then we will do a lot to defend our home. And so will these bacteria in our gut, particularly things like lactobacilli. So they have ways of defending themselves against bacteria, some of which are more harmful to our body. So the more we can cultivate, it's a bit like growing a garden. How do we grow plants? We give them good food, we give them good liquids to nourish them. If we can grow the right bacteria in our guts, then they also will help defend the body against infections. So how do we do that? Various ways. We need to get the right bacteria in there to start off with. So for that, probiotics are useful. But what I would suggest, rather than taking probiotic pills, is to have fermented vegetables. Actually, any fermented food may contribute useful lactobacilli. Yogurt also has similar things in. However, probably the best way to get them is from fermented vegetables rather than fermented milk, or with kombucha, it's fermented sugar, which could be more weakening for the body. And traditionally around the world, people have made sauerkraut and other kind of vegetable pickles, partly a way of preserving the vegetables which grow in the summer, so there's something to eat in the winter. So in Eastern Europe, for example, they grow a lot of cabbages. In the winter it gets very cold, there's nothing really growing, so they pickle a lot of cabbages in salt to make sauerkraut, and then they have some vegetables to eat over the winter. And this also makes an excellent probiotic. So very good to eat some sauerkraut, pickled gherkins, or your own homemade brine pickles. When we finish this is put a recipe on Facebook. So let's eat some of those brine pickles every day, or sauerkraut every day, to get the right bacteria in our guts. Something else which is very useful is to eat plenty of fiber, because that gives them somewhere to live. So by eating whole foods, whole grains, whole beans, whole vegetables, that gives a nice home to these bacteria. And then it is very helpful not to eat refined carbohydrates, not to eat sugary foods, because sugary foods really promote the growth of fungi and different kinds of organisms, which can then push out the beneficial bacteria and can create problems like candida overgrowth. So let's not eat sugar. And as I keep saying, there's a nice document on our website if you have sugar, under information, some help on how to kick the sugar habit. Okay, so Gabriella, thank you for your. So anyway, I was just describing another aspect to our immune system. Lots of different elements to our immune system: our lungs, our intestines, our microbiome, our lymphatic system, our thymus gland, our spleen, our lymph nodes, our white blood cells. A lot of different elements to our immune system, which we can strengthen in order to have good immunity, especially at these times. So Gabriella, suggestion for someone with asthma. Um, so what's happening with asthma is we have these tubes going down into the lungs, which have a lining of cells, and asthma is caused mostly when this lining swells, which basically then narrows the hole, and then breathing becomes more difficult. So the question is, what narrows that hole? So one thing, as I was saying earlier on in this video, and you can, if maybe you heard from the beginning, but if you weren't, you could go back to the beginning and listen to it, is that certain foods cause the cells, the mucous membrane lining in the nose to swell up, especially eating a lot of soft, watery foods, eating a lot of fruits, a lot of tropical fruits, eating sugary foods, caffeinated foods, and excess alcohol, soft drinks, combinations of anything with sugar in, chocolate, cakes, etc., can make this layer swell up and bring on asthma. Sometimes it's said to also involve an allergy, but really an allergy happens for the same reason, that this mucous membrane becomes weaker and more swollen, and then substances can get through and set off an allergic reaction. Allergies, in some ways, allergies and asthma have quite a similar cause of eating these more macro foods, these more expansive, weakening foods. So what can help with asthma is to not eat those foods, to eat more whole plant foods. Eat more. It doesn't have to be vegan, it can include a bit of animal food, but eating more plant foods which have a lot of fiber and structure: whole grains, whole beans, whole vegetables, green vegetables, root vegetables, seeds, nuts, a minimum amount of fruit possible. Nothing wrong with eating fruit from one's own environment sometimes, but if one's trying to get over a problem that's caused by tissues becoming weak and swollen and waterlogged, it could be useful, if one can, not to eat fruit for some weeks or a couple of months to give those tissues a chance to rebalance. If one does crave fruit, then it's better to cook it. So, for example, make some stewed apple or some poached pears, add just a few grains of salt to it, maybe thicken it with some cornstarch so it's in a nice kind of sauce or something like that, and that will have less of an effect on the mucous membrane. Also, in macrobiotics, what often helps the lungs is more dry foods. So it's cooking, grains like short grain brown rice and millet and quinoa, so they're more dry. Also cooking vegetables, stir-fried vegetables, baked vegetables, steamed vegetables, etc., but not having everything very wet, just having things a little bit more on the dry side. And to drink, maybe some mild herbal teas, or you might have heard of twig tea or bancha tea, or grain coffees like barley cup and caro and yano, instead of or sugary drinks or black tea or coffee. So the whole diet is to help that mucous membrane dry up, and so that those air passages open up. And definitely, I've seen that a number of people really reduce or get rid of asthma symptoms. Obviously, it depends on how serious the asthma is, how long they've had it. But certainly one can get a big improvement. So I hope that's helpful, Gabriella. If they're interested in more help, then do say, I'm happy for them to get in touch with me, I'm happy to have a chat, and I also give online Skype consultations if people want to go more in depth and get some more in-depth help with their health. Hi Jenna, what other puddings would I recommend? You're making a lot with stewed fruit at the moment. I have a box delivery, so not getting a choice over what we're getting at the moment. Yeah, so things like, if you could buy some dried fruits, like some dried prunes, apple rings, things like that, you can cook them up. Dried apricots, you can cook those up so that they become soft and open up in just a little bit of water, which becomes quite sweet and quite syrupy. Or again, you could thicken it with a little bit of corn flour, so it's in more of a sauce. Add a few grains of salt. Really helps bring the sweetness out, as well as just helping balance it and the effects on the body. You could also maybe make something like a fruit crumble as well. I'm just trying to think what other desserts. If you like creamy desserts, there's a food called amasake, which is made from fermented rice or millet or oats. Not available in so many shops, but if you look on the website of clearspring.co.uk, they sell it. You can order it by post. It's sweet and creamy and really yummy. You can eat it straight from the jar, but it's quite sweet. So usually you might just put a spoonful on top of some fruit or something else. Or you can dilute it about 50-50 with water, add a few grains, thicken it with some corn flour. If you want to add a little bit of grated ginger juice, a few drops of vanilla, almond essence or something like that for a different flavour, that can be very nice, and then you've got a nice warm, creamy, comforting dessert. So do try that as well. And then Zvonka, what can we do to help the nervous system, especially the vagus, in recovery from coronavirus infection? Because it's been shown, in addition to cardiovascular and lung problems and organ failure, coronavirus also severely affects the neurological system. So I wasn't aware of that. So interesting. So how to help our nervous system? Our nervous system, in terms of different foods, also is helped by slightly more yang foods, by the whole grains, the beans, soups, minerals really help nervous system. So when I say minerals, it's from using salt, but also using seaweeds. And a very good way of having minerals is as a broth soup, like a miso soup, or with some seaweed in, or a shoyu broth soup with seaweed in, or a herb salt, or just a soup seasoned with salt. But very good. You'll be cooking vegetables. Vegetables have a lot of minerals in. Put in some seaweed, like some wakame, some dulse, or put in some kelp. Wakame is thin and soft. You can just cut it up and put it in. Cut it up with scissors if you buy it dried. You put it in and you can eat it. It's much thicker and harder, and it takes about 50 minutes to really soften. But what you can do is you can just put a 3 or 4 inch piece in your. This is how in Japan they make a dashi. Have it in there for 10 minutes and then take it out, and that will add a lot of minerals to the soup. These broth soups, if you're eating animal foods, you could also put some fish in and make a fish soup. Traditionally in China they would make a chicken soup to have a strengthening effect on the body. There can be a bit of a disadvantage to chicken soup. Fish soup is pretty strengthening. You just make a simple vegetable soup, cut up some white fish or some salmon or some shellfish and just put it in for the last few minutes. That has a very strengthening effect on the body and also on the nervous system. Also, in Oriental medicine, they consider that the nervous system is the kidney energy. So all the things which really help the kidneys, such as minerals, eating whole grains, whole beans, sea vegetables, a good amount of sleep, a good amount of rest, keeping the kidneys warm, etc., are also going to help the nervous system. So some of the worst things for the nervous system, again, are sugar and strong yin foods, because they take energy out of the nervous system. So thinking about foods in terms of energy, our nervous system needs a lot of ki or chi or life energy in. So right now you're probably all sitting down and your brain is using about 1/3 of the oxygen and sugar in your blood. 1/3. And your body gets 2/3, and your brain, your nervous system, is using 1/3 because it needs a lot of calorific energy, but it also needs a lot of ki or chi. So what helps the nervous system are foods which are dense in chi, and like whole grains, you can plant them in the ground and you get a whole new plant. Beans, seeds, especially root vegetables, sea vegetables are high in minerals. You know, these energy-packed foods will help bring more energy into the nervous system. And especially don't smoke marijuana and have recreational drugs which take ki out of the nervous system very fast. So hi Trudy, nice to have you here again. Hope to see you locally again soon. Hi Tara and Isabel. So Dave, you're saying the vagus nerve can also be helped by slow, deep, steady breathing. That's true. So that's also a good suggestion to help the vagus nerve. So learning abdominal breathing is very, very helpful for all kinds of different reasons. So I don't know whether I dare talk about that again, because I'm always talking about abdominal breathing in classes. Some of you I know will know how to breathe abdominally, especially if you studied shiatsu, Trudy. But maybe I'll just show you again, because abdominal breathing does so many different things. It strengthens the lungs, because when we breathe with our abdomen, our diaphragm is coming down, so we're getting more air and ki into our lungs. It's calming down the vagus nerve. It's helping the lymph, which has come up our legs and into the abdomen, which has to come up the body and comes back into the blood here. It doesn't have a pump, and so when we breathe deeply, it helps push the lymph back up here. It also helps to calm our mind down. It helps to center us. It helps to bring more energy into the lower body, into the kidneys, into our hara and our bottom two chakras, which is the source of most of the body's chi. So learning to breathe down here is really, really helpful. So once again, I'm going to demonstrate this, and let's all do this together and see how you feel. So I'm turning sideways. You can see what I'm doing, so you can put a hand on your chest and a hand over your navel. And we're going to keep our chest relatively still and just breathe mainly with our abdomen. So taking long, deep breaths. So as we breathe in, imagine air coming down here and your belly expands. Then to breathe out, gently squeeze your abdominal muscles. And take a breath in. Breathe out. Squeezing your abdominal muscles. Breathe in, just using your abdomen. Breathe out with a squeeze. And as you breathe in, keep imagining the energy coming down and your mind, your self-awareness also coming down into your belly. This all helps bring the chi down into this part of your body. So we're wanting to build a nice ball of chi in this part of our bodies. And take two more breaths, and just notice how you're feeling. And if anybody would like to report in how you're feeling after doing that abdominal breathing, it would be very interesting for everybody else to hear what you're feeling. No comments coming in yet, so let's continue by breathing with the chest to make a really full breath. So what we're going to do is first of all breathe into our abdomens and then into our chest to the point where we feel our shoulders rising up, and then relax. Breathe into the abdomen, then the chest, until the shoulders rise, and relax. So we'll take a few more breaths like this, first into the abdomen. So this is taking really full breaths. Getting the maximum amount of air and chi possible into the body. So breathe into your abdomen first, then your chest, and then relax. Okay, let's see, just check out how you're feeling. That is, if you haven't practiced this before, you may feel that you've just breathed more deeply than you normally do by using the whole of our, body to breathe with. So you may well feel calmer. It has a calming effect on the nervous system. It also helps digestion. If you're getting a lot of digestive problems, a lot of bloating, then this breathing is really helpful too. So very good to do this for 5 minutes or even 10 minutes. If you're feeling tired, very good to do this, and you might find in a few minutes it really wakes you up, it really enlivens you. You can do it sitting down, you can do it lying down, you can do it standing at the bus stop or in one of these queues outside shops. You can just start doing your abdominal breathing. Nobody's noticing. Bringing your energy down, centering yourself. Also good at calming down anxiety and fears. Am I going to get coronavirus from that next person in the queue, or whatever? Yeah. So Zvonka, calming down and relaxing. And do much more in your body after the abdominal breathing. Often you breathe from the sacrum and breathe out, then from the solar plexus, and then from the upper chest, feeling the expansion. Okay, yeah, also a nice method. So lots of different ways we can breathe to have different effects on us. But so simple, and yet, you know, some of these simple things really can have a strong effect on our health long term. If you really practice this, and you really start, you know, after a while, you'll start just automatically breathing with your abdomen, just like babies do. If you can find a baby in the next days, maybe you can't if you're severely locked down, but if there are any babies around, even from 2 meters away, watch them breathing, and you'll notice that they breathe primarily with their abdomens rather than their chests. This is like a natural way of breathing. But we often build up a lot of tension in our diaphragms, often a lot of emotional tensions in our diaphragms, and sometimes in our small intestine and our stomach and our liver. And then this prevents us breathing deeply. And we may also emotionally resist breathing deeply, because when we breathe deeply, we start contacting whatever emotions we're holding in this part of our body, and maybe we don't feel so good. Actually, what is to breathe deeply, to start flushing some of these emotions out. And if any of you have heard of rebirthing, this is a technique for breathing in a rhythmical way and it's amazing the effects it has. It really flushes out a lot of stuck ki, emotional ki, just all kinds of things. Sometimes one has hot flushes, cold flushes, emotions come up, all kinds of things happen, and afterwards one feels much clearer. So the breath is a really powerful tool for us. So yes, please, if you don't naturally breathe with your abdomen, please practice this abdominal breathing every day, and then the full breathing until it really becomes automatic. So hi Rob, nice to have you here, and Wendy too. It's been quite a while since you were here. Missing your presence here. Missing people's presence altogether. Being in this very nice place, quite large place, mostly on my own, without crowds of groups coming here to study. But anyway, now I'm talking to lots and groups online, which is a lot of fun, and hopefully in a few months we'll be able to start gathering together again. So I've been talking for about an hour. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to continue and answer any questions you have. If you haven't, then this might be a good time to close. If you're doing well in this kind of lockdown situation, I've designed a whole range of different online courses to help people with their health during this period. So if you check on the website, maybe I'll put a link. This is up to a page which summarizes all of our online courses, covering a whole different range of subjects. More introductory course of six evenings on how to improve our health with food and exercise and doing and emotionally, etc. I've just started a series of cooking classes. Next month I'm going to run an introductory shiatsu course. If you're locked down with at least one other person, then it'd be great to learn to give shiatsu while you're in this lockdown situation. You just need one other person for that course, and I'm going to teach you how to give a full body shiatsu treatment, which is just wonderful to receive. I'm missing having a shiatsu treatment occasionally. Just very deeply relaxing and rejuvenating, and can help sort out niggles, back pains, neck pains, digestive problems, etc. And also, if you, I know a few of you have studied more in depth already on our first year course here, or more. But if you'd like to study more in depth, I'm going to repeat my 6 steps to health, or 6 steps to well-being course, which is really quite in depth. It's 6 classes, 2 hours each, looking at 6 of the major systems in the body. The digestive system, the liver and gallbladder, the kidney and bladder, and therefore the nervous system, the reproductive system, the lungs, and one other which I can't remember right now. So we're really looking in depth at understanding those systems, how we can develop our health within those systems, and then also how to heal various common problems in each of those systems as well. So if you enjoy in-depth study, then that would be a good course to join, and it's always limited to a maximum of 10 people, so there's plenty of time for people to ask their own questions, and I've been quite surprised by how close people get on those groups as people are talking about what's happening with their health and in their lives. So do check those out. Okay, Annie Goodhis, thank you for joining, and Jenny too. Unfortunately, just about to finish, but shortly this and there'll be a video of this up. So if you want to listen to it, you can click on it and listen to it. Talk to about a range of subjects from how to strengthen your lungs to how to avoid having zits during your teenage times, to how to reduce mucus forming foods, and also the importance of learning to with your abdomen as well as your chest. Okay, so I think no more questions coming through, so this is a good time to end. So thank you very much, thank you for coming. I hope you found it useful, and we'll be here again at next Tuesday at 8:20. So if you have more questions, if things come up in the week, then please come along with your questions, because this is a really good chance to, we can go quite in depth with looking at different health problems, or how to help our health in different ways, and really give out a lot of good information. Okay, so I'm going to say good night for now, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and have a good day tomorrow. Bye-bye.